I just want to mention something that really pisses me off, and that's when people post panels like these and they say something like, "Oh, is the best artist alive," but that's not true. Hey guys, welcome back to my second channel. You know what people ask me like all the time? What's your opinion about this mangaka? Do you like the art from that manga? Who's your favorite manga artist, and so on. A lot of you guys still have some kind of good faith in me, and making a tier list is the perfect way to make everyone hate you. Awesome idea, I know. Now before we start, there's something very important that you need to know. I do not like rating or judging art. It's fine to criticize art or have an opinion, but art is so subjective and you can't objectively judge it. That's why on my tier list, it's just gonna say how much I enjoy the art of said mangaka. Okay, let me get dressed up and then we're diving right in. I just came out of the shower and I didn't consider that I'll be shooting another video, but here we go. Takashi Obata is the first mangaka that I'm talking about. That is, of course, primarily the mangaka of Death Note, and I think most of you guys know him from that. He's one of the most well-known and also best mangakas of the early 2000s. I don't know how many of you guys have actually read Death Note instead of watching it, but in an era where shonen art style was relatively mainstream, Death Note was already, in my opinion, above average when it came to art. And the guy just keeps getting better. In his most recent manga that he's made, like the Death Note sequel or Platinum End, you can tell how good of an artist this guy is just by looking at the perspective that he's drawing. The guy is just like fine wine, he just gets better with time. And for this video, I also wanted to consider artworks outside of his manga because, as you know, he has to somehow finish a chapter monthly. So the question is what Obata can do without any time pressure at all. In this case, you might not know, but Takashi Obata is a copic god. For real, check this out. And I think it's so cool that there are still people out there who color really good traditional copic artworks on this level. Absolutely mind-blowing. What more is there to say? Just a heck of a crazy artist. I don't think many people have this artist on their radar, but feel free to take it as a tip if you don't know them already. Demizu Posca is the person whose name I can't pronounce, but who's also illustrated Promised Neverland, and as you might know, I love Promised Neverland. I've always had a soft spot for manga that go dark out of nowhere, so my story writer and me also tried to do the very same thing with all manga series back in the day, and I still do not regret it. But I think Posuka's true strength shines through in their colored illustrations. There are always such insane perspectives, many little details, vibrant colors and intense compositions. And sometimes the ideas behind these images are also so cool as well, like this chessboard for example. Just awesome in terms of ideas as well. And the artworks are mostly just scribbled and don't even have a clean line art. I often do that myself, I just think that looks cool. What I often notice when reading their manga though is that the characters are sometimes really off model, and that's sometimes the case with the colored illustrations too. But yeah, everyone has their strengths and weaknesses, so if you don't know the artist, definitely check them out. Their art book is also supposed to be very good. I just love the art that I've seen so far. Yoshiro Togashi. Ooh boy, I think you might know him, the mangaka of Hunter x Hunter. Personally, I don't like his colored stuff all that much. It's not bad, it's just not up my alley. So let's primarily talk about the manga itself, which doesn't really have a deadline for the chapters. The manga comes out when it comes out, which is already such a privilege when you're a mangaka in Shonen Jump. And the drawings in the manga are most likely all done by himself. People tend to overlook that when judging art, but mangaka design the pages and draw the characters, but the assistants ink or sometimes even draw the whole background. But with Togashi, it's been strongly suggested for ages that he does all of this completely by himself, and that's pretty cool to be honest. And the guy's got skills. Sometimes he just comes out of nowhere with a page that gives off such a Berserk vibe in terms of detail and grotesqueness. And I like his style. There's something about that mix of minimalism and the 80s, 90s art style that I just find awesome. There are many people who discredit Togashi because sometimes he just throws manga pages together, but again, I'm not just reviewing the manga here, I want to show you what every artist truly has to offer, even outside of manga. And if we were to consider not only artistic skill, but also things like story writing and world building, Togashi would be even higher because I would literally sell my left kidney to know what's going to happen on the Dark Continent in the current arc. Next one. Taty Fujimoto. Ooh boy, again. Let's be clear, I'm just ranking how much I personally like their illustrations as a whole. Fujimoto is the mangaka of Chainsaw Man, Fire Punch and Co. And again, I've been raving about all of these works for years. Especially Goodbye Eri is one of the best one-shots that I've read in a long time. And especially the manga covers, I think they are really cool looking. I believe what I like most about Fujimoto's art are the ideas. I think that's a very good way to sum it up. He sometimes just comes up with such cool manga panels where you can't help but think, man, that looks awesome. But on the pure artwork level, it never really left much of an impression thus far. I know a lot of people really like Chainsaw Man and they're like, oh man, look at those awesome double spread pages though, Fujimoto is amazing. But there is literally no manga that comes to mind where it's so obvious that the assistants are carrying the whole thing here. You really just have to look at it for a split second to see that the assistants have drawn the background and effects with so much love, and Fujimoto has just sketched the characters in there. Now, sometimes it really looks like the characters were just photoshopped into the page because the styles are so drastically different. And when I look at these characters, they are all just so stiff and undynamic looking. I'm not saying that all of this leaves me completely cold, because, as I said, the guy can make at least awesome colored illustrations, but so, I'm just gonna say I like it. Yeah, that's pretty much summing all of it up. Next, I want to talk about Isayama. Most of you already know, but the Attack on Titan mangaka wasn't really an artist at first. He just had a great idea for a story and started drawing. And I have immense respect for A, how much he improved, and B, how much was still drawn by hand on a piece of paper completely traditionally. By now he also has a really good eye for composition. I think it's just the drawings themselves that, well, yeah, they just don't really do it for me. Still, I have enormous respect for that guy, the way he fought his way up to the top like that. The drawings just aren't my cup of tea. That's all. I was recently in a bookstore and I took a look at Chojin X, and I thought to myself that I'm gonna slap myself if I didn't include Sui Ishida on this list. You all know Tokyo Ghoul. The guy's just amazing. Tokyo Ghoul is rightfully known for its visuals. Just the way Ishida designs these pages is like watching a movie unfold right before your eyes. Sometimes there's so much depth and dynamic in them, or they're just plain aesthetic. I gotta be honest here, at first I didn't really like Ishida's messy coloration style. That messiness just wasn't my thing, but by now he doesn't do that anymore, at least with his new manga. With Chojin X, the artworks are absolutely to my taste. Stunning. That pretty much puts it best. You saw it coming, I saw it coming, I'll probably even put it on the thumbnail once I'm finally done editing this godforsaken long video, but of course, Yusuke Murata is in here. How could I not talk about him? He's the true definition of GOAT. There's hardly any mangaka who can match him. But not because of One Punch Man. I just want to mention something that really pisses me off, and that's when people post panels like these, and they say something like, oh, Yusuke Murata is the best artist alive, but that's not true. I've mentioned it several times before, but most of the backgrounds are usually done by the assistants. And with One Punch Man, we even have proof of how the assistants get drawings like these. Like, yeah, can you just please draw the whole background here? There are no characters in it anyway. The mangaka himself did not draw that. Please give credit to the people who actually deserve it. But what do illustrations look like that Murata just did by himself? Well, like this, for example. Holy hell, yeah, I'm not discrediting anyone here. Yusuke Murata is still the GOAT. Perspective. coloring, anatomy. Check out the Marvel fan arts that he's made and you'll be amazed. And these artworks are drawn traditionally with pen and paper. And of course he also illustrated One Punch Man pages that have no background completely by himself. And also traditionally with pen and paper. Goat? Goat. Goat? Goat! By the way, I know it's annoying, but if you've enjoyed this video so far, I would appreciate a like. You know, that supports me, YouTube's algorithm just really likes that. And I'd be happy if you've enjoyed it so far. But you can also just dislike it if you didn't like this video, I guess. And if you wanna go the extra mile, just leave a comment. Maybe you have a different opinion somewhere here, and you can just let me know. Don't worry, my ego can take it. It sometimes really hurts to have to say this, but we're also talking about a few fallen heroes. So obviously, rest in peace. The life expectancy of a mangaka is on average 20 years lower, so I'm afraid we'll have to say goodbye to so many more people who are still on this list. Have I mentioned that I'm really glad I'm not making manga anymore? Just before I speak about it, I have not read Berserk yet. I haven't been feeling very well for the last couple of years, so the thought of reading a dark fantasy manga about the abuse of women, murder and death, let's say I could think of a couple more pleasant things to read during that time. But first of all, I can still talk about Miura's art as a whole, even without having read Berserk. And also, like half of you guys wanted me to talk about Miura when I asked which mangaka I should discuss on Instagram. So yeah, what else is there to say? Berserk's art is insane. Period. What more can I say about that? I think the biggest strength of Berserk is the attention to detail. There are mangaka who, instead of drawing on A4 pages, simply draw on A3 pages, and it would not surprise me at all if Berserk was drawn on at least A3 sized pages. I find it very impressive how well Miura masters composition. Most pages always have this one point or area that draws your focus to it. And also the values of how he uses light and shadow are just so insane. When I see that, I immediately want to sit down and start drawing myself. However, I'm pretty sure with such an intensely detailed drawing, much of the labor was actually done by the assistants. According to Berserk manga credits, Miura had 5 assistants working for him, and you can really tell it would not have been humanly possible to publish a manga book that looks like this by yourself with that pace. And it always annoys me that I know for sure there are always going to be people who want to debate with me which artist gets which tier, but at the end of the day, it's all just subjective. I mean, call me crazy or whatever, but if you really look at only the panels or the artworks where it's just about the characters, without any work from the assistants, just Miura's art, personally, I like Murata's artworks just a lot more than this, but that's a matter of opinion. Keep in mind, this is about Miura as an artist, not Berserk as a group effort. Now here's someone who, just like Miura, draws the most detailed manga panels. Junjiito. You surely know him. I'd say he's one of the most famous horror artists. I'll obviously won't show the extremely disturbing drawings here, by the way. But in terms of art style, it's definitely very similar, I'd say. So I really like Ito's stories, but that obviously doesn't matter here, it's just about the visuals. Also, just like with Berserk, it's all done with pen and paper. Very big props for that. I think that Miura, as an example, has something that Junjiito doesn't have so much, and that is working with values and composition. Instead, Junjiito's drawings obviously live off the shock factor, and above all of that, the detail. But things like composition and values are something that I'm still missing here. I decided against showing the best drawings on screen, by the way, because even as a fan, I thought they could get pretty goddamn disturbing, but I still love the drawings anyway, even if some of them are absolutely disgusting. In the best way, of course. I think Arakawa's drawings are really good. Yeah, so check it out, that's really good. I like it, but I've never been at a point where I thought, wow, that blows me away or stays in my memory big time. I also wouldn't know anything specific I could highlight, it's just really good art. Yeah. Before you ask, this guy's name is Ogure Ito. Oh great, haha, get it. I used to read Agia and I struggled through it, Even though I disliked it, I did it for the visuals. And I think Oh Great is an incredible artist. It's not just a question of assistance. You can see that even when he only draws his characters on screen or when he does cover art for his tankobons, the guy is just crazy good. And even though I actively lost brain cells when I continued reading Agi halfway through, the art alone was worth it. Okay, almost worth it. I think the guy has such a good sense of black and white contrast. He just knows exactly how to use black and white so that you can clearly make out the character, and he can also handle screen tones immensely well. I really like his art style. And when he draws action, it's inhumanely dynamic. So Oh Great can draw foreshortening that always looks incredibly natural. Just an art genius. What can I say? When I think of good drawings by Yoshiro Oda, I think of details. Details, details, details. Just panels upon panels full with details. And I think with small panels, that's really not a good idea, but when it hits hard. And I have the feeling that Yoshiro Oda is often underestimated, but don't forget what I just said at the beginning. You also have to look at what people draw when they don't have to finish a manga under time constraints. Yeah, look at that. That's by Yoshiro Oda. The guy's just a really good artist. Maybe he doesn't draw like this because he doesn't like the style, or maybe it's because it's not timely feasible, who knows, but people always think that the guy can't do anatomy because he draws characters in a very stylized way, but that's just his preference. He just likes to draw cartoony, but that's not because he lacks skill. People just sometimes don't understand that. But that's why I'm here to say that that's nonsense, and the guy's way better than most people think he is. I only read a bit of Kimetsu no Yaiba, and I'm only addressing it in the context of this video because you guys on Instagram kept saying that Demon Slayer shouldn't be left out here, but somehow, well, I did some research, but I found barely, or rather everything that I found from an artist's kind of view didn't really leave much of an impression. Maybe the story is like amazing, but in terms of illustration, nothing particularly stood out to me about the art of Kotoge. Sorry. I knew about Boichi when he was making Sunken Rock, and you probably know him from that too, but he's also the artist for Dr. Stone and so many other really good projects. And I don't know what else to say here, so whatever you want, you get it from Boichi. Be it great perspectives, details, anatomy, the only thing that really bothers me is when he tries to draw stylized manga-looking women. It just, well, I personally don't like it. But he can also draw them less stylized if he wants to, so that's fine with me. I didn't really want to push him all the way to the top, but he really can draw everything. I can't think of any reason to say otherwise. He's one of the best artists that I have seen in the manga and comic world. Period. I think this might be the last controversial take in this video. Gege Akutami is the mangaka of Jujutsu Kaisen, which is probably nothing that I need to introduce to you guys. I bought the prequel volume and I got through the first arc. And somehow, well, I also have a couple of Japanese Jump issues here, and I looked at the most recent chapters and it really didn't speak to me, to be quite honest. Even the manga covers that I've seen seem to be, like, competently made. They have some cool color choices or some nice ideas behind them, but nothing really grabs me or stands out. As I said, just all goes for the art. The characters can be cool and the story is another thing entirely, but artistically it just really left me pretty cold. Now we are talking about a few legends, unfortunately, who have recently passed away, in this case, Kazuki Takahashi. It's actually quite easy to rank him because he drew the artwork for the Blue Eyes White Dragon, and with that, he surpasses all of the other artists on this list. Nah, just kidding. But if you haven't had anything to do with Yu-Gi-Oh! For a long time, or maybe never had anything to do with Yu-Gi-Oh!, just look at how insanely this guy improved. I would love to get killed by that dragon, my god. I won't talk much about the Yu-Gi-Oh! Manga because it's over 25 years old, and honestly, I don't really like it visually, if I'm honest. I don't really like this extra clean artwork in the manga. It's probably just a preference though. Instead, let's primarily look at his fully colored artworks because, Oh my god, how much can a person improve even after 20 years of drawing? Sometimes the colors are a bit too fantasy, where the colors become all JoJo-like, not really my cup of tea, but there are so many really good artworks where you can see that the guy must have such a good understanding of perspective. I need a couple of you guys who aren't into Yu-Gi-Oh! To give me a reality check here. Is it just me? Maybe it's just nostalgia speaking, but I love these drawings. I would really give anything to get another movie like Dark Side of Dimensions that's personally written and designed by Takahashi. Whether black, white, red-eyed or blue-eyed, no one designs dragons like Takahashi. Rest in peace. I'm sorry, y'all, but I thought I'd just rip the band-aid off right away. I'm also recording this right after Toriyama passed away. Short and sweet, we are talking about the other legend who has passed away with Miura and Takahashi. You saw it with Takahashi earlier. Just because I love and feel nostalgic about their art, it doesn't mean that I'll put them at the very top right away. I want to be really fair about how I feel about their art. Akira Toriyama was, of course, the author of, among other things, Dr. Slump and Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball is really simply drawn, but it looks so good. I think that's the strength of Dragon Ball. I won't go into detail here because I made a video about paneling on my main channel and why the grandfather of all shonen manga still does it best. Just like with Takahashi earlier, we're not focusing on the manga that he's made, like Dragon Ball or Dr. Slump, but rather on his artworks, because a lot of you guys, I think, underestimate just how good of an artist Toriyama actually was. He made artworks for Chrono Trigger and for Dragon Quest, among other things, and they are so good. You might not think that at first, but the guy could make amazing artworks if he wanted to. And even the ones for Dragon Ball are really, really detailed and really good. They are just lesser known because they don't feature any angry-looking blonde men. That was just totally his thing. Dinosaurs, robots, with clothes, and a lot of detail. I love these drawings to no end. Simply unique, and that's to be expected by the person without whom 90% of our favorite series and video games wouldn't be what they are today. As Eiichiro Oda said it, this man was the tree, and everything we consume today are his branches. Hopefully, heaven might be as joyful as he depicted in his manga. Rest in peace. I thought it would be only fair to briefly talk about the Dragon Ball Super manga as well, which is illustrated by Toyotaro, and he's essentially Toriyama's successor. No pressure, by the way. You're just the successor of one of the greatest mangaka of all time. Don't sweat it. People who are maybe around my age or maybe also a little bit older might remember Dragon Ball AF, which was a fan project that played after Dragon Ball GT, and it was known for looking really faithful to Dragon Ball. And the artist for this project was Toyotaro. It was such a genius move to bring this guy in as a successor. With all that being said though, I don't like the manga this guy's drawing. The pages are always way too cluttered for my taste. I don't think the screen tones make it prettier, but rather more messy, and I could go on for ages. But I'm pretty sure Toyotaro had requirements like, hey, we have to catch up to the anime, and so on. And his drawings are definitely corrected to look more like Toriyama's current art style, because when he was still independently drawing, Son Goku looked so much more like this classic 90s Goku that you might already know from artworks. That's all okay because, as I said, manga is mostly a product of limitations and compromises. So as with the other artists, let's take a look at the colored illustrations, and they are mwah. Sometimes the lighting's just awesome. He can also really do perspective very well, and there are some amazing poses that this guy's drawing. I wouldn't say that I love Toyotaro stuff, and there's also this whole plagiarism thing, but the guy has some skill for sure. I would actually like to see a Dragon Ball project by him where he could just do without any stress and especially without requirements. I'm pretty sure it would look even better. So all in all, I really think there are worse people who could have gotten their hands on Dragon Ball. Well, of course, I have not forgotten about Kishimoto, do not worry. You might know him from an underground title named Naruto. Maybe you've heard of it. It's kinda big. And it's also got a whole generation of kids run as if they had scoliosis. Real talk here, among the big three back then, Naruto was always visually the weakest for me. Bleach had this elegance and minimalism. One Piece was packed with details, and Naruto was just well drawn, but nothing that really set it apart from the rest. Now, while working on this video, I flipped through a couple of volumes again, and what primarily stuck with me was how well Kishimoto mastered the basics, especially things like perspective. That's always such a cool eye-catcher, and he does it really quite a lot. This kind of crazy warp perspective looks really good, and it never looks weird or distorted, it's just a real eye-catcher. And he's also really good at coming up with wallpaper ideas. That was, among other things, my inspiration for making my manga cover. I love these artworks that are kind of like movie posters as tankobon covers that summarize what the volume is basically about. So he can definitely come up with cool artworks. I remember just buying volume 50, I think, because it had this badass cover. It's all really cool, but it's not like the drawings blow my mind or something. Yeah. Come on, let's knock out the last one of the big three right away. And it's really hard for me to estimate how people see these illustrations when it comes to favorites of mine, because I know every panel from Bleach inside and out. I burned them all into my retinas as a teenager. But Tite Kubo isn't known for detailed drawings, but rather for the absolute finesse of his art. You often have pages, or even double spread pages, where there's just one character. And I think this minimalism is really a love it or hate it kind of thing. As a teenager, I wasn't really sure why I found it so expressive while I was looking at them. But now, 10 years later, I'm aware that you really need a good sense of composition to come up with something like this. So every videographer or photographer, or just people who understand the rule of thirds, know exactly why Kubo especially likes to emphasize his characters in double spread pages like this. And Kubo can also illustrate artworks with distorted perspectives and such. But I think Bleach and Kubo are known for very delicate and expressive artworks first and foremost. I haven't really seen this play with minimalism and composition in manga ever since, and what can I say? I just love it. Shaman King is one of my favorite manga, and that's largely because of the coolest main character in manga ever, Yo Goddamn Asakura. It's always so sweet when people write me stuff like, I only started reading Shaman King because you said you like it so much, but Shaman King is one of my favorites because of the unique superpowers and the characters. Sure, I liked the look of the manga too, especially at the beginning. It's pretty cartoony looking, but that's the perfect art style for this manga. But it's certainly not on the level of Berserk or any other manga on this list. And yeah, obviously Takai's art also evolved over the course of the manga. It gets better and better later on, this guy still has it. You know that when Stan Lee wants you to illustrate a manga for him, you must be a really good artist. I actually don't like Takai's current art style all that much nowadays. He has really delicate lights and his art is so goddamn sharp, jagged and angular. It sometimes makes me pause and think for a moment and ask myself, what the hell am I looking at the moment? And that's a very good example that would be minimalism without the finesse of Kubo, which means that you just don't immediately understand what's going on. But I would still say I would at least put this guy in the like tier. This guy is still such a good artist, and his color pages are... I just realized you can't see what I'm doing, but when I'm that's a chef's kiss. Okay, what do I have to say about the mangaka whose art hangs in the goddamn Louvre? I don't think any mangaka has achieved that before or since. Well then, of course his art has to be at the top then, right? Well, Hiriko Araki is really hard for me to put in a tier, to be honest. This guy is absolutely legendary, but when I look at his colored artworks, I always think to myself, no matter how good it is, it's just really not my cup of tea. It's that kind of surreal color choice that I really don't like. But then on the other hand, when I look at his drawings, you can see why this guy is so legendary. I mean, look at this. It's so well drawn and some pages are Oh my god, I like the perspective and everything. I can't bring myself to put him in the same tier as Dragon Ball Super and FMA. Just from the pure skill perspective, it's artistic work that I just love. Even if the colored artworks absolutely aren't my thing and I don't really like the art style all that much, it's still visually stronger and stronger the more I look at it. And this guy's drawing all of this while being in retirement age. These manga just... They are cut from a different cloth, man, seriously. A mangaka who falls into the category called, if I were to consider his stories, he would easily be a step lower. But again, we're only talking about the visual aspect here, so if you haven't already gotten the memo after watching 90% of this video, yeah, it's just about to look. I actually really like Hiro Mashima's art style. I would even go so far as to say that I find Fairy Tail to be so visually pleasant to read because, like, the pages aren't really cramped and the drawings are so simple, but still appealing, that these drawings really influenced me back in the day. At least when it comes to making manga. So in terms of execution, I would have really said that that's what I wanted to achieve with my manga back in the day, at least visually. I think Mashima knows exactly where to bring in details, and not too many, just very selectively, and that makes a manga very clean, but still not empty. And I think the colored illustrations are all very good too. I also have his art book here. And yeah, it's not hyper-realistic art or something, but it's still really good. From today's perspective, maybe it's a bit too simple for my taste, and I also have the feeling that he can only draw like 3 or 4 character templates at one time, but if that's what he likes to draw, then who am I to judge him? When I was going through his artwork for this video here, I'm always like, damn, actually I really visually like this better than Fullmetal Alchemist or Dragon Ball Super and stuff. I really enjoy looking at these drawings. Even when I was picking artworks for this video, I was like, oh, that's good, and oh, that's also good, and oh, I need to put that one on screen as well. But still, I haven't made it past 5 chapters of Eden Zero. Man, I could not care less about the story this guy writes. Okay, I don't know how many people saw this coming or not, but I've been following Hori Koshi, the artist of my hero, for a very long time. I already read his previous manga, which I actually found more interesting in terms of story, but purely visually speaking, Hori Koshi's just insanely good. I don't even know where to start. So, like, the subtle stuff is already really impressive already. He has such a good understanding of human bodies. Even if the poses are minimalist instead of like really extreme action poses, they always still look so human and never stiff. I mean, most of you guys are artists yourself, you know how tricky that can be, but Hori Koshi always makes it look so easy. And even when he draws shirtless people, it usually always looks anatomically grounded instead of very stylized. The proportions are actually really good. And that's just the tip of the iceberg here. That was just about poses. But especially when he draws things like hand poses, you can see how crazy he can go with this. Or facial expressions. He can stretch those to the max. And he can just do everything. Even dynamics look so good in every panel. With the current arc, I'm sitting there every time and I find myself gasping at least once per double spread page. And let's keep in mind, the assistance do the inking and the screen tones, sure, but when I look at the colored illustrations, I'm like, yeah, this guy's just, he can draw everything. And the manga is mostly drawn traditionally. And yeah, a medium doesn't make an artwork better or worse, but it's obviously even more effort, which I really respect. What I also found extra impressive is how good and trained his eye is when it comes to values. Maybe you've noticed this yourself when drawing manga, that if you shade it too much and put too many effects on your page, the page eventually becomes very messy. And I've never had this feeling with Hori Koshi's work. You'll see what I mean by that in a moment. The mangaka that I'll discuss next is actually a very good example. Problem is, I wanted to put Hori Koshi in the second tier, but that would be kinda unfair, to be quite honest. I just said that he can do everything, so he should actually be at the top. I really think he could produce artworks on the same level of Boichi or Murata if he didn't have any time pressure, but I just haven't seen it yet. I honestly think that he has this kind of skill, but as long as I haven't seen it, his art is just absolutely blowing me away. A little Easter egg for all of you who have been reading manga for a long time, Akira Amano is actually the illustrator of Reborn, quite a solid shonen manga from the early 2000s, as she also doesn't seem to have drawn much more than that, so we'll just judge Reborn, I guess. I remember really liking Amano's style. She draws faces very delicately and she also has a great sense of aesthetics. There were pages where I thought, damn, on that day many women probably had a very special kind of awakening while reading that in the early 2000s. The problem is, I do not like her coloration, like at all. Usually you are happy when there are colored pages in a manga, but with Reborn I always hated it. I just don't like it. I don't like the color choice, I don't like the coloring style. She's one of the few artists where I would say I prefer drawings when they are not colored. And the same problem also plagues the manga, especially in the last third. There were sometimes manga pages where I had to pause for a second to think about what I'm actually seeing here. Do you understand now what I meant with Hori Koshi's genius earlier? It's really not easy when you plaster everything with screen tones and still want to keep it clean. So yeah, I actually like her art, but things like the coloration and the whole screen tone massacre really brings it down for me. I've been reading Vagabond for like half a year now or so, and in terms of story, I found it really good from like the halfway point. Visually, I was not prepared for what I was about to experience. Like, what do you want to hear from me? Again, the elephant in the room, it's not about Vagabond, it's about Inoue, the artist. And the artist, like Miura or Murata, didn't do all of the crazy impressive backgrounds by themselves or anything. He has assistants for that. But when I look at the artworks of the characters that he draws, I have absolutely zero doubt that this person has simply mastered art. From any perspective, with any medium, this guy is just the GOAT. Also, the image composition in his art is absolutely amazing. And to know how to make a boring scene that's just playing out in front of a yard look so visually interesting, or portraying a simple motion like swinging a sword for 300 chapters and still finding a new way to portray it every time, is work that you simply cannot praise enough. Also, maybe you've never noticed while reading, but the really cool important action scenes are basically not having any speed lines in the background. It's simply just the action itself. And it still looks like these characters swing their arms with supersonic speed. His other works like Slam Dunk are also awesome, so yeah, what do you want to hear from me now? For me, that's absolutely top notch, period. To me, hardly anyone can top that. By the way, a warm welcome to all of you who skipped to the end just to judge me and get mad that I don't put their favorite artist in the tier that they wanted me to. Like I said, it's not about how good which manga is, just how much I like the work of said artist. I also thought about showing you guys my manga shelf, or maybe make a room tour. I have a lot of ideas for this channel, I just need to know which idea I should make a video about first. By the way, I also have a video where I talk about animation. It's not just someone else's animation, it's my animation that I created for a fashion brand as a commercial. If you want a full story, just go ahead and check that video out. See you over there.